Welcome to Gallery Espace, to this preview of Vasudevan Akkitham's solo show at the gallery. We are after what, since 2006, Akkitham? Yeah. Arrivals and Departures. It's a series of works that he's done in the past 5 years. And Akkitham needs no introduction, I think, to most of you. He's been, he was head of the department, he retired as head of the department of painting at Baroda's MS University, the Faculty of Fine Arts. And these works were made, were painted post-retirement mostly. And he's been most prolific in the past 2-3 years since his, spending long hours in the studio. I think, let's begin with this work.
No, I'll begin with one.
Yes.
First of all, I want to thank because this is the place where I had my first show long back. So it is almost like coming home. This space is very familiar to me, and it's nice to see a set of paintings which are absolutely different from what I had shown here long back. So in a way, it is like a homecoming for me. Very happy that I have a host like Modi to receive this show. Second thing is this that you see there is a confusion always about an artist and an academician. I'm caught in the middle of it because I can't really say that in the last 30 years I have actually spent as much time I would have liked to spend in my studio, because my responsibilities were also to go to the faculty and teach, which I enjoyed thoroughly. I met my wife there, I had everything which I have today because of the faculty. So I have no regrets. Since you mentioned about the retirement, I would say that after the retirement, I feel that I have the whole time, something which I couldn't ever. You see, when you're a teacher, often what happens is that you not only think about your work, but also of your students' work, which takes away a lot of energy, which takes away a lot of inspiration. Whereas now, I don't go there at all. So once that chapter is closed, it is closed forever. So I spend most of my time, as you said, I don't know whether I'm prolific or not. I wouldn't say that, but I spend more time in the studio. One thing is that I often tell my students that the first things you should have is a studio space. When you leave the faculty or when you complete your education, you should see that you should have a space where you can think and introspect, where you can do something on your own. So studio in that sense, or getting back to the studio now, I feel what I have been preaching, I'm trying to practice. So in that sense, for me, this set of works in a way is the blossom of certain things which I used to tell students to do. So there is certain sense of satisfaction in putting together this body of work and making a show. Now, you see, this is a work which is titled Summer Thoughts, which actually goes back to 30 years. I had actually done a painting called Summer Thoughts while I was a student at RCA, that's Royal College of Art in London. In a way, harking back to my own village and remembering it in the cold climate, grey climate, dark climate in London. So I thought, and this is actually reproduced in many places, even in the most recent book, which Parul and what is her co-author? The painting is reproduced. It's the same. If you look at it, you would find that in that particular painting, I had a boy trying to climb upon a kind of a thatched roof, and behind or in front, whichever way you want to read it, you would see a vast expanse of landscape. It is also about certain kind of maturing of yourself, or realizing that there is a world outside your small premise. So I thought that perhaps post-retirement I was coming back to certain kind of a vista, a certain kind of premise where I could replicate the image which I had done 30 years ago. And it is about home. And in fact, a lot of works in this exhibition are about returning home. Not necessarily returning, because you never return to the same home, because it is never the same. But there is something of home which you carry with you, like a tortoise carries the shell. So that is there. And you can very well see that most of the works in this show actually talk about certain kind of not necessarily dichotomies, but juxtaposition of village and city, which underlines in some sense my own autobiographical history.
There is a juxtaposition also of images, for instance, the ladder here, the home here, and in fact you can see that through the show, where you kind of juxtaposed two paintings which kind of have the same motif or the same object. Could you speak about the home?
Certainly. First of all, I must say that I am not an artist who sort of decide how I should paint and paint. So a lot of things get evolved in the process of working. Actually, this is a painting I had done maybe 6 years ago, and I repainted. Any work which comes back to the studio, I begin to rework on that, which perhaps not a great idea, but I know a lot of people who do that. Recently, I was reading an interview with Peter Doyle, the British painter, who does the same thing. Howard Hodgkin, who is an abstract painter, used to do the same thing, that you will find name of the title of the work, and the period of painting must be 10 years. Likewise, I'll tell you one more instance. Bonnat, whose work I admire, especially in terms of his color, tone relationship. Once visited a museum, and there was a painting of his on the wall, and VR and Bonnat were friends, and they were part of the movement called Nabis. So he got VR to distract the attention of the security guard, took out the color box from his pocket and started painting in the museum. He was not caught. So there are instances where I think I'm one of them. If the painting comes back, I feel there is something wrong. But I think that also gives you certain lessons about how to improve. It's not that I have improved much, but improve your own work. Maybe there is an element of academician within me, which not satisfied with whatever, or a critic within me not satisfied with what I'm doing. So I keep changing things. So what I'm trying to say is that they are related. They talk about the same kind of subject matter, but they are painted at different times, and I've reworked on it. So I don't know what the dates put behind, but it must be 4 years, 5 years difference.
This painting, and also in fact in all of your paintings, you have this creation of a kind of space, almost like a stage, a proscenium, and you get a sense that you're looking through it into something that's happening beyond. It's something that happens in all of your paintings. Would you speak about
this set of works? Yes. And I think it also comes from looking at early Renaissance artists. If you look at Giotto, if you look at Carpaccio, if you look at any of Simonet's painters, you would find that there are always, and especially if you think of Venetian painters, maybe because they were traveling in the boat and things were seen as if it's on a proscenium theater. You again look at things as if happening on a theater. So I have a feel, and the most recent example his retrospective is on in London now, is Philip Guston. He was highly influenced by the early Renaissance painter. You would find that they all were theatrical. There was a stage and on which things happened. Maybe these are the aspects which knowingly or unknowingly, because I am explaining it, must have seeped into what I am doing.
The other thing that I find is the play on scale. Here, it's not just, it's not just something that's happening in the distance, but you're kind of almost playing with, scale. For instance, here, it's very hard to judge the distance, whether something is in the foreground, something is in the background, how far back. You played a lot with.
Generally proportions are, something which is related with the time and space.
Yes.
Something which is closer, like Ajanta, looks like more important and very, very close to you, and something very far. But there may be also, cases in which, you would find the reversal of it. The best example would be Flagellation by Baroda Francisca, in which the main event is actually happening at the back. So, it also creates certain kind of a tension and a kind of a surrealism, in some ways, which I think is very much part of turning things topsy-turvy, turning things in, or twisting things in a particular way to achieve or to heighten certain, atmospheric sensibility, at least in my case.
Is that also what arrivals and departures is all about? Are you arriving again back to that language? Here, maybe in both narrative terms and also stylistically?
Yes, it is leaving behind, a city which is burning. I mean, that's how I look at it. It's not necessary that you should look, because after I paint it, I think it's open for, various interpretations in many ways. I think the whole idea, came from a large triptych which I did for the last Kochi Biennale. Which is divided, I titled it The Distance. And the first part dealt with departure. Second one, travel, journey. Third one, arrival. So I think I have used the same idea, for this, exhibition. And you can also see that, there are many images which talk about, journeys, moving away from one shore and landing, on another. And there are also other painters. I mean, I keep making these references. This is a, problem of a teacher, or teacher within me. There's a famous painting by Departure, by Beckman, in which you have a family sitting in a boat. It's a painting painted during the Nazi time, and he completed it in Amsterdam. And you have two, wings for the painting, which deal with horrendous, cruel, what you call violence. That's one. Then I was also thinking about, metaphysical artists, like Biographical, so on. And there's a famous book by Naipaul, I think, called The Enigma of, Arrival. It's a very important book which talks about his arrival in England as well as in New York. So all these things, so it's very difficult to pinpoint and say. There are many streams which, come into, join and become a river.
I'm going to move forward again. The ship docking, arriving, end of the journey, again the same idea. But there's something very disquieting about this, especially I find, this plane where you seem to, which is, which really interests me, because it's very hard to make out what exactly it is that it's not quite abstract, it's not figurative. Is this a tree? What is it? And I find this a quality in several of your works, where the brush strokes are, kind of fluid in a way that, you've deliberately left it like that.
Yes. I mean, I think, you see, even though I'm not an abstract painter, I admire abstract painting, one. Second thing is that, when you're a teacher, you normally tell that whatever brush marks you make, the hatchings you make, the renderings you do, should follow the form. If the form is, round, and you follow, the line, the contours, of it. But you see the manner in which I work, everything gets erased and reworked upon. So some of the elements, which are part of the earlier phase, will remain as a residue. It is like, excavating, an archaeological, site, and finding, things which were part of an earlier era. It may not be an era, but it is definitely, a period in which where thoughts were different. So, it creates, certain kind of a tension. So there is the whole image is built through, certain kind of linguistic contradiction between the way you want to describe a form and the language, you want to use. So I think that makes, because there, it invites lot of accidents, surprises, so that makes, painting looks much more satisfying, or the process of, making it much more, satisfying, at least, in my case.
So you already said that, literally, you have literary influences, in your work.
Yeah.
You're thinking about a lot of what you've read when your, kind of
Certainly.
images come to mind. Also paintings.
Yeah.
Is there also an autobiographical,
Certainly.
element? Where did the ship come from? Where did this image come
Ship,
from?
I can't, just tell you where it comes from, but, I looked at a ship, certainly, because I wanted to paint a dock, and I wanted to paint a harbor. So, I could draw all these things without any reference. Ship, I couldn't, because I really, realized that I had a photo, image, on the mobile, so I used that. As far as the literary influences are concerned, I think they are very important, for me. Also because I think because my father, who was a writer, and I grew up reading a lot of, literature, and as I said, I was not completely convinced about making things which were purely abstract. I wanted certain references which would connect with your life, connect with my own, life. And Beckman has said once that the world is already abstract enough, and why do you make, why do you make more abstraction, kind of thing. So I think literary influences are absolutely, important. In fact, one of the great things happened for me was to come to Baroda, where you had, people who taught, or teachers who taught, that there is no need for any kind of segregation between, painting, sculpture, and literature and music. They all, expressed, more or less, a lot of commonalities, between them, like Ghulam Sheikh, for instance. So I feel that, that has given me the strength, or that has given me certain conviction that there is nothing, because in the old days, one will always say that it is very literal, which was used in a derogatory, way. Whereas if you say it's very literal, I would take it as a positive thing. There's nothing wrong. So it is there. Cinema, literature, all other similar, expressions, I find need not be necessarily away from you. That's what I feel.
Mood of somewhat despondence that one feels there, and the stalk. I mean, the stalk you can see in so many of your paintings.
Stalk is something which actually, connect with rural India, or rural, landscape.
Especially Kerala?
Yeah, especially Kerala and everywhere. I think, when you plow the fields, you will find, herd of, stalks, coming, sitting on the buffalo back. So in a way, it is symbolizing something which is to do with rural ambience to me. That's one thing. The other thing, I think I have titled it Reverie, if I'm not mistaken. And that perhaps comes from reading a book by Guston Bachelard, long back in the 80s. And not many people talk about that book, and I haven't also read it for a long time. And especially architects, refer to that book. I'm talking about Poetics of Space, which was written in 1958. And it talks mostly about architecture, not necessarily, but it also talks a lot about how images are embedded in our childhood and how we carry them. Like, say for instance, one of the names of his books is Psychoanalysis of Fire. So what I'm trying to say is that there was some kind of a reference to poetic images which follows you, like the childhood memories, follow, me, which I think had some influence on me. And don't think nowadays not many people talk about poetic, because if you use the word, your works are very poetic. I mean, it's not very, received in a nice way, I suppose. But that could be one thing, which is to do with, and it's also like reverie would also mean daydreaming, and I'm interested in that space between the real becomes unreal and the unreal, becomes real. So that's an interesting area.
But I'd really like you to share with all of us, everyone listening here, about this, what you spoke yesterday about the relationship between, animals and, man, which is something you allude to a lot in your works. Yeah.
I mean, I was telling, them yesterday that, that I was cooking up, basically. Yeah, one also does that, but that also has its own, valid, reasons. If you look at a lot of literature, especially from the medieval time or before that, you would find that they always found an animal or a bird to tell the stories. There must have been some kind of taboo, or there must have been some belief that, talking directly may not necessarily be the best way to do it. Like I'm thinking about Tutinama, which was done during the Mughal period, for instance. Or for instance, Ramayana in Kerala, in Malayalam, which is told through a parrot. So maybe I was just trying to find some logic, maybe the bird has a play, in a role. The bird has a role to play, which is of telling the stories, and the girl is lying down and listening.
Yeah, it's very dark. Is what I was going to ask.
Dark, literally, as well as in terms of its color scheme. Atmospheric wise, I feel it's a kind of one is titled Passage Tonight.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, Passage Tonight.
And the other one is called Terrace. I mean, it's dark also because of the presence of two skulls. And I was telling them that this is done post-COVID time. 1, 2. I have also used skull images a lot in that whole set of works which I did for the last Kochi Biennale. So it talks about some kind of an eerie silence, something which is uncomfortable, and imminent storm or darkness or whatever of that kind. So it is dark compared to many other works. And also you can see that a lot of my works do have some kind of a disturbing quality. You may not discern, you may not recognize it immediately, but if you look at it and especially scratch the skin, you will find there's something which is unsettling. Maybe it's a little more apparent. Not necessarily intended, but it's happened, that.
I find a lurid light, that covers. And
light is something which was not there. I was, kind of say this, that, there was a time I did a lot of acrylic paintings in between. I'm talking about the works which I did in my last solo show in Habitat Center. And I also tried to do something, which I thought was more contemporary, or would look more contemporary, and dealt with a lot of, design aspects. But it didn't work for me. It's not that I don't like all the work, I like some of them. But then I thought, maybe I should go back. So the one important project I did immediately after that realization is that I decided to make paintings on a very small scale, intimate scale, and decided to move away from acrylic. I have nothing against acrylic because I was unable to, use it the way I wanted to use it, and revert back to oil paint. So lot of works in that show were smaller in scale, maybe 1 foot by 2 feet or kind of things like that, and they were done giving a lot of importance to atmospheric as well as the light, which plays an important role in creating atmosphere, which perhaps comes from Bona, an artist who had, not that I look at Bona's work anymore, but there was a time I had realized that he was a great master in handling color and finding the relation with tone. So when every time you put a color, you are thinking also in black and white, which is not an easy, I can't really think of. Picasso thought of Bonnat as a very minor painter, but I don't think that way. Of course, Picasso is a great painter, but Bonnat is also a great painter, and especially when it comes to creating atmospheric qualities. So these are the background.
Let's go there so that we can end there.
Yeah.
This work.
That's mine.
Yeah, I mean, what you were saying about that quality of disquiet.
Yeah.
I mean,
there, I think.
Very much so. I mean, every time
You
I
see,
look
it
at
is a
this work-
painting, I must say, I'm not absolutely happy in terms of finishing. But I left it because I said, if I go on working on it, and trying to sort of finish it, resolve it, at every level, something which is magical about it would get lost. So I left it. So I know that, there are times, the painting looks unfinished, but I thought it's okay because there is some kind of a magic which had happened, while working, and I thought, if I need to retain it, I should leave it here and put down my brush, which I did with this one. Regarding this, this is called rice tusker.
Rice tusker,
Yeah. And it is something which is to do with the tusker, of course, used to come down from the jungle and was very fond of eating rice. And there was a big issue, it's basically about the confrontation between the animals and human beings. And the government decided to pack him off to neighboring Tamil Nadu jungle. And there was a huge protest and people were on the street saying that we want the rice tusker back. And they went to the governor, So that is something which was happening. I'm not saying this is about that, but that was something which was happening at that time. So there is something of that kind. The other thing is about this painting about nativity, which is by T.R. I think which is in the National Gallery, London, where you have the Christ. It's a very beautiful work. Somewhere it's damaged. So these were two things which actually collided when I did it. I can even say that it is also about Buddha's,
Yeah.
because there is a story of Buddha's mother Maya, dreaming of a white elephant, but that was not my intention. So if one wants to, one can go on elaborating, but that was not my intention. My intention was to actually create certain kind of atmospheric intensity, which tells something about a particular local, as well as create certain kind of innocence, which is part of wonderful earth we live, or the wonderful greenery surround us.
So many different, kind of inspirations, references, just
Yes,
colliding
yes,
together to create.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I think you've also spoken often about, the way a painting. It's not about what it says so much as the atmosphere it creates, which is the point of the work.
Yeah.
Which I think.
Yeah, like say for instance, when you're a writer, you want to write a novel. What do? You normally make a timeline and start finding characters and write. When you do also painting, you do a lot of exercise like that. But even in great literature, I think there are times the characters would hold your hand and take you somewhere else. Bhupen interestingly used to tell that I start a painting about wedding and sometimes it ends up as a funeral painting. So there are things which are really that's why somebody like Guston says it is a long preparation for a few moments of innocence. So the last thing in the end is something which happens beyond your own control. Something which is innocent, which you haven't planned, which is not part of that characters you have noted down, which is not part of the timeline which you have drawn. Is something which is looming outside all this. Sometimes it happens, if you are lucky, yes, a little bit.
Magic.
Yeah. Worked upon, like I said, they came back to the studio, so they had the fate of going through the whole life once again in some sense. One is called Chain City. I think there's a city, which is
This one.
yeah, on the hilltop, like you perhaps find the medieval cities in Italy, or also here, in Himachal or in other places.
Yeah.
And you have a dog, obviously in front. I'm literally, sort of pointing out, things and chained.
Yeah.
And
So if I were
which
to
is like
literally
a-
point out things, there's something a little violent about it. Something chained, something there that looks red.
Yeah.
A sense of impending doom almost.
Yeah, I mean,
This
it's
is
not
post-COVID?
intended,
Or am I reading too much into it?
No, I mean, I told you that, I'm somebody who has, brought up on literature by Kafka and, people like that. So, there is certainly a kind of a dark side to, whatever I do, or what I have imbibed by, reading a lot of, literature, which can become very, very dark. But I also know artists, who deal with dark, even, but not that dark, when I'm talking about Nilima Sheikh's work, she deals with, issues which are very dark, but sometimes they're not that dark. So, rather than, putting fire to something, I would rather, like to, put fire to, what you call, something like husk, which burns, but doesn't, flare up, like, fire, and burns a slow, burning. So I think there is something of that kind, like you can talk about the same thing about the central,
Yes.
figure,
The
talk
figures.
about that,
All
and
of
of
it.
course there is a skull on the top.
Yes.
All those things are there. But I don't want it to be, too direct, So that is where I suppose dream, surrealism, all these things help to, to subvert things.
Which again applies very much to this work.
Yes, the only problem I had this painting while was, drawing the erection of the elephant. I kept, this work all the time. I didn't know whether I should do it or not do it. Because my intention is not to sensationalize something. But, when you see an elephant, big elephant with a big penis, like that, children giggle. I mean, I have seen it myself. So, I was wondering whether I should do it or not. There was a hesitation, a little bit of hesitation. Then I went ahead, and I did it. That's one important aspect of this work I remember. Otherwise, you have figures which look like real. There's
Almost a
real,
spectre.
and they look like ghosts,
Yes.
So it is also about, talking about certain kind of memories. Like before my father died, there's another painting I've done on that. He used to call me and tell me, because I was with him for 2-3 months. I had already retired, so I could spend time with him. He would look at the wall and tell me, can you see this figure? Can you see this character? Can you see this event? He was looking at the whole, life he lived as if a cinema which is projected onto the wall. So I was trying to, I don't know whether I succeeded or not. I thought, maybe let me bring in, So maybe this man is drawing or something on the wall. And it is also very, very close to Dante's, cave, where you have images which are, because of the fire in front. That's what he's saying. Which he perhaps is the first cinema, in some sense, where the shadows are, projected onto the wall. So there's all these things.
So
is it necessary to know all this? I don't think.
No. What I'm curious about
yeah.
is you refer to Dante here. You have all the Italian Renaissance painters. You speak of painters of the 19th, 20th century in the West. What about India? Who are your major influences here? You've spoken, I think, about Ghulam.
I have spoken about Ghulam Sheikh because I came to Baroda because of Ghulam Sheikh. Because I met Ghulam Sheikh in an art camp, and that was the time, I was going through certain kind of disillusion with my institution in Toronto, and I thought that it's an ideal place to come to, which was. I enjoyed my time there, and everything I expected, was there, in some way. And it was not only the figuration or literary aspect of things, but also abstraction, because there were also artists like Jaram Patel and Nasreen working, making certain kind of So of course, I mean Bhupen I was very close to, and I knew all these people intimately, and it has rubbed off a lot of things on my work, which I am proud of, and it doesn't matter to me works or not.
Ongoing series, which I think you first showed at Kochi, which was this huge 45 feet long series of works. You've spoken often, but if you could just tell us, and the different styles that I see here, that I was telling you about. Pen, you seem to just kind of had fun.
Yeah, collage is a kind of a language which allows disparate things to come together, contradictions to coexist. So when I started doing, the circumstances were such, that I had to do something and I couldn't go out, and I had that, pile of papers with me, so I kept doing it. That's how then the invitation came to be part of the finale, and I thought that why not continue it and make as many as the 165 to create a whole year's manual or an almanac. So that's how it happened. But I have continued to do it because it helps you, first of all, it's much faster. Oil paintings takes ages. Sometimes I take 1 month, 2 months. Whereas this is something which can be done within a day, maybe in a couple of hours. So there is certain kind of immediacy, about the language, and it allows also to spell out, things much more than reworking, something and going on and not knowing exactly where you are going to end up, whether in a funeral or a wedding as I said before, So I thought, it, and also in Kochi what I found is that people come and look at different things, they read things in a different way. There's a very famous painting of, triptych there is, and polyptych also which way to look at. There is a painting by Duccio in Siena called Maestra, in which the narrative is very different. It goes in a zigzag way, which means that you can read whichever way you want. And also, this is not arranged by me.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah.
You haven't specified how to arrange this. You haven't specified how many should go up at one time.
Correct. So, I think there is also something interactive about it. And you can rearrange it like a jigsaw puzzle, not a jigsaw puzzle which has to, you can rearrange the way you wish to see the narrative developing. So I enjoyed doing that, and it also allows to go back and pick up something which you have left behind and take it forward. So it's an open-ended language, and when you have many of them, it creates a long saga in some sense.
Thank you.
Done. I'm free.